Good morning. My name is Brunette. I am the broad listing broker for HUD. Today we're going to go through the HUD Sales Contract package, title insurance, and inspections, which are our main issues throughout the past couple months with changes with HUD. Alright, the first process that we need to do on finding a HUD property is obviously what we can do through MLS. But all HUD properties across the U.S. will be listed on www.hudhomestore.com. First, when you have that pulled up, if you have not registered before, your broker has not registered with his NAID number, your broker must do that first, otherwise you will not be able to log in as an agent. Your NAID number your broker should have. When you do come in here to register for the first time, if your broker has not, you will use your broker's NAID number and your agent license number. Don't use the broker's agent number because then the bid will be registered underneath him. So assuming that you've already done that, we will go right into the login page and you will put in your username, and your specific password. And it can be anything that you wanted, which you originally set it up for. Okay, if you've done it correctly, your name will appear at the top right corner. At that point, we will go over to the home section. That'll bring us to the home screen again. I'm still logged in. I will click on Wisconsin. You can also do other searches down here in different states, counties, anything you like. This is just primarily how I do it. I find that this is the easiest to do. Click on Wisconsin. That'll bring up all the Wisconsin properties. At that point, I will just click on a county and put in, let's say, Eau Claire County and see what comes up. Hopefully I picked the right county where I have properties yet. Let's take a look here. We have one. So at that point, this one is in Augusta, as you can see. So I'll have a picture. You'll click on the highlighted case number, and it will show you that the bid submission bid deadline is daily at midnight. So for this particular property, the bid ends in 13 hours and 49 minutes. Now when a HUD property is first listed, it is listed for the first 30 days, available to owner-occupants, nonprofits, and government agencies only. Let me define owner-occupant for you. An owner-occupant is someone who does not have title to another property. So if they own another house or a secondary cabin somewhere, or land, anything like that, HUD considers you an investor. So you may not be able to bid on the property until the 30-day deadline is over. And that 30-day deadline is over, as you can see here, period deadline, July 18th at midnight. The system is automatic, so every day, your first 30 days is owner-occupants, but they will not open any bids until day 15. Now let's not be real concerned about how many days on the market, because sometimes what will happen is I will get the listing and it may already be in the system for 3-4 days, and then I put it on the MLS and you've already got 3-4 days off of it. So you still need to check. Just because I listed it on one day doesn't mean that it's 15 days exactly from then. You need to go to the HUD Home Store and find out when that deadline is. This particular one has already been past the 15 days that I've listed it, so it is a daily bid opening. Now there's been a few calls on this pink disclaimer underneath, and this states that it's subject to the asset manager accepting a bid from an earlier bid period. What that means is that bids that were submitted yesterday will take preference over any bids that are submitted today. It's not instantaneous where HUD is going to accept a bid as soon as the bid deadline is done. They manually review them the following morning. And usually by somewhere between 3 and 5 o'clock, and as late as 7 o'clock, we will get an email notification that your bid was accepted. It will go to me and to also the selling agent. I get a lot of questions on people asking me, well, Aaron, how many bids are on the property? Well, I don't know that. I do not see any of these bids. The only time that I know if there's bids on the property is one of two ways. First of all, if an agent tells me that they sent a bid in, or if there was feedback on book a showing that a bid was submitted, or if I submit one myself. There was recent cases where we had 20, almost 25 bids on particular properties. I won't have no idea on any of those, neither will my asset manager until the bid deadline is closed. Here you will see an FHA financing. insured with escrow, meaning that it is allowable to be FHA insured, and usually it's going to be a 203K. I know this particular property pretty well. It needs a lot of work. If it was uninsurable, then you would see that UI here, and that would mean that it's not FHA insurable at all. So you need to check this to make sure that the type of financing your buyer is using is going to be applicable for this particular property. It does have a repair escrow of $3,300 for what they feel would make the property FHA insurable. Now, FHA insurable, meaning that there are some repairs that need to be done on the property. This is not an amount of money that HUD will give you. HUD does not do any repairs or give you any money, with one exception. That is a lead-based paint remediation, and they will allow up to $4,000 to cover the cost of that. Anything over that, and that includes the compliance retest afterwards, has to be written into the 203K loan. Now, if you want to take a look at what items are in here that are repair escrow, you can go into here, the addendums. The addendum section will have your environmental compliance report, your lender's guide, which I always recommend that people take this, and it's a PDF file, and send it right to the lender. A lot of lenders are a little confused on how the property, how these particular properties go. It talks about the listing bid, period bid explanation, which I went through. Keep in mind that all these bids are time-stamped. Talks about the property listing disclosure. We'll click on that. We'll see that this will tell you what HUD feels based on their initial observation what was wrong with it. Or they'll just put extra items on there that they feel you need to know. Has an enclosed porch, missing flooring covering, and the deck needs some work. And it needs a repair of plumbing. Okay, so those are the items that they allowed for the repair escrow. At that point, sales contract package, which we'll go over in a few minutes, is always attached in the addendum section. It's universal for every property out there. There's a little FAQ here, section here, for what you should do after your bid is accepted. I'll go through that briefly later. And then there is a property repair disclosure also. We'll open that up on this particular one so you can see what they actually allowed to. And this is all based on the appraisal. Keep in mind, FHA, the HUD case number, the 581, is unique to that particular property for the life of the loan. So what's going to happen in an FHA situation is if your buyer is using FHA financing, your buyer has to use HUD's appraisal, which is always the initial list price. We've had some issues before where properties were pretty underpriced and FHA buyers came in. For example, for ease of math, let's use a $100,000 property came out, and people that were FHA using an FHA loan had bid $120. Now, just as in any transaction, the appraisal is already known at $100,000. Your buyer bid $120. Now, your buyer, your FHA buyer, will have to come up with a $20,000 difference in cash and provide proof of that, along with a 3.5% down that their lender is going to require for FHA financing. We've had some properties fall out of contract because they didn't realize that HUD's appraisal has to be used in an FHA purchase. In conventional, it doesn't matter, because conventional, the lender is going to order their own appraisal. And when we get in a situation where I see a lot of showings going on a property, usually what I do is I put it in the agent remarks, or I will send a mass email out to everyone stating that, hey, this is an FHA property, just so you understand that your buyer is overbidding the property, and they will have to be responsible for the difference in cash. So back again to this is the $3,300 or the $3,000 allowance for the repair escrow. Next, here is the property condition report. Now, this is by no means a professional inspection. Okay, we highly recommend that you have a professional inspection done. They're saying here that the AC and tested with the electric on, it was okay. There were no appliances, the electrical was okay. Here's the big one, plumbing. Always watch for this. Typical, most properties are going to have some plumbing issues. Now, those plumbing issues may be minimal or they may be severe. I have seen properties that were just a matter of a line was open, to a water heater. It didn't get winterized and they didn't close the line properly, and it's just a matter of turning that valve shut. So don't think that the property is completely destroyed just because it didn't hold pressure. But this is what we look for. Pressure tested at 40 psi, dropped to 0 after 20 minutes. Recommend certified plumbing inspection. This particular property, I know I've seen some broken lines, But it's up to you guys to, kind of take a look around and see if you see some obvious, plumbing damages. Visual inspection on the water heater looked okay, the sewer septic looked okay, and the roof was visually inspected from a ladder. Now, this is just by what's called the FSM, which is the Field Service Manager, and I just want to reiterate, no, by no means is that a professional inspection. But it's giving you kind of a heads up of what they've seen. So that is, and if you've got, this is where you're going to end up putting your bid also. If you need agent info as far as where I am or how to get a hold of me, that's all in here also. A map of the property. But we'll go back to the addendums here. Once you reviewed all that information, then you're going to come in here and you're going to hit submit an offer. I'll click on that once. Obviously, I'm not going to do anything with it, but to submit an offer, you're going to put your broker, or your NAID type, which would always be a selling broker. I've never dealt with a government agency or nonprofit on a HUD property, but if that was the case, these are the other selections you would use. You're going to put the NAID number of the broker, and then you're going to type in your security code. Once you do that, then it'll bring you to the bid section. And actually, I think what we might do here is, I'm just going to briefly run through this real quick and put this in so we can just kind of see what the bid screen looks like. And then we'll put our security code in. Oops, I typed terribly, sorry. X. So we'll verify that I put in the right information. That will go in there, and I did. Yay. All right, agreed upon purchase price. You put that amount in here. Applying for a HUD or FHA insured financing using 203B, which is just a regular FHA loan. This would be with a FHA loan with repair escrow. I don't know a lot of lenders that do that anymore, but it's up to you guys to kind of find that particular lender. And this is a 203K loan. Or paying cash, applying for conventional or other financing not involving HUD or FHA. So you have 4 options to pick from. Closing costs. You're allowed to pick up to 3% of the purchase price in closing costs. If you do not ask for any closing costs, keep in mind that your buyer may be responsible for the seller's portion of the title insurance policy, which has to be done. Usually they run about $100,000 policies, about $400. But you want to check with the title insurance company that you're using to make sure you understand how much that cost will be if your buyer is agreed to pay for that. Here would be your commission. Keep in mind that your commission is variable. That's why on the MLS it says $1 for the commission. The reason why is you are allowed to ask up to 3% in the purchase price for your commission. That can make a big difference in 2 people that have buyers that enter the same offer in, and they both ask for 3% commission. I've had questions like that before where they've seen the property close and people have said, well, geez, my buyer offered the same thing. And I asked them, well, how much commission did you ask for? One said 3 and the other one said 2. Well, that affects the net to HUD. And that is going to make a difference on whether your bid gets accepted or not, as will item 5 on whether or not you're asking for closing costs. Section 6B will always be automatically filled in. That is my commission. My commission is not variable, so you cannot touch that. Thank you. That I am paid exactly that amount, period. You'll see that this section here is not, you cannot fill anything in here because, like I said, this is only open to owner-occupants. Now, once it opens to everybody else, then the rest of these buttons will highlight. Section 10, if the seller does not accept this offer, the seller may hold or may not hold. That's kind of an important section. I always usually have it at may hold as a backup. I've seen a lot of HUD properties fall out of contract right away because people did not send the contract down to Texas within 48 hours after the notification of acceptance, and then they will automatically go to the secondary bidder. Now, it doesn't mean that you're automatically, you've got to take the property. They're going to come back to you and say, hey, you still want the property. If you still want it, great, then you can proceed with it. If not, and you don't want to be held in the backup, then obviously pick the other one. Down here, you're going to need a few things from your buyer. You're going to need a social security number, their first name, their last name, their address, city, zip code. And as you can see down here, the selling information was already put on here. Very important that the first name on your bid, if you use John and then last name Doe, and you do not use a middle name, that must match what is on your fillable sales contract package, which we're going to go over in a few minutes. If you write in here John P. Doe, and on your sales contract you just write John Doe, that's not going to work. They're going to reject the contract and possibly reject your offer, period. Secondary purchaser. I ran into some issues with this. Most people just saying, hey, you know, it's John and Mary Doe. Keep in mind, you cannot remove people. You cannot remove a primary purchaser. You can remove a secondary, but not a primary. So figure out who's the primary borrower on this loan. Yes, you know, you may have a secondary, but if there's any possibility that secondary may be removed, and you put that secondary into a primary position as the purchasing purchaser, you're going to have a problem. You're not going to be able to remove them, and you can't take then the secondary and put it in primary. So just remember, whoever you put in the primary, that person is always going to be on that loan. You can remove a secondary, once again, but not a primary purchaser. You cannot take that secondary and make them primary. Okay. So once you do all that, you're going to hit continue. There'll be another section that'll just say, hey, here's your bid terms. At the very bottom of that page is a small box that says, hey, you acknowledge that you've watched the video. And a lot of people miss that box because then they call me and say, hey, I can't get past this next screen. Well, you need to click that box, then click continue. Once you click continue, your bid confirmation page will come up, and you must print that page. That has to go with your sales contract package. So make sure you print the next page. You'll have a confirmation number on the top of it. Once that's done, at any time, you can go into your bidder functions, and you could put in the confirmation number, your property case number, the purchaser last name, or their social security number, excuse me, and check to see where their bid is sitting. I always like to put the bid in and make sure that it did get submitted. When it first gets submitted, it's going to say sealed bid. Okay. After it does get accepted, you're going to see accepted underneath it. It'll be a little, once you hover over it, it'll come up with a code. And under review, pending review, other bid, under contract, other bid selected, canceled, or withdrawn. You have the ability to also counter directly from this site once you do get countered. Now, HUD will counter any reasonable offer. When I mean reasonable, I don't mean a property listed at $40,000 and you're offering $5,000, because that is not reasonable, although I see many of those every week. So what we want to do is make sure that your bid is reasonable. Once the HUD determines that it is reasonable, they'll send you a counter, and that counter will show the exact net that HUD will take. That counter is not counterable, like we may be used to countering 6-7 times an offer. That is not true with HUD. They will counter your exact net, and at that point you must either adjust your commission or your buyer's purchase price to make sure that HUD gets that net. Once you do that, then you're still going to wait for HUD to send you what's called the NOA, which is a notification of acceptance. You must also print that when you get it by email too. I get the same email, and usually what I do is I call the other agent or I text them. I send them an email saying, hey, congratulations, let me know if you have any questions. I also have been doing lately, the past couple weeks, is that agents feel free to email me your complete package. I will review your package for you, make sure that it's not missing anything, thus avoiding you a second overnight fee down to Texas. I think they run anywhere from $28 to $40 or something like that for them. So they'll save you a little bit of money. It's not a disclosure problem. I mean, obviously your offer is already accepted. Send it over to me. I'll review it. It'll save you a lot of time. It takes me about maybe 10 minutes to take a look at it, make sure everything's done correctly. I have no problem doing that. Okay, so that kind of gives you just a brief overview of the website. What we're going to do now here is we're going to go into the actual sales contract package, and I will show you the forms that need to be used through that. Okay, now we're going to go through the sales contract packet. Now, what I wanted to talk about with what we did before was looking at the HUD website. Now, this contract package, once again, is available underneath the addendums on the HUD Home Store's website. I suggest that you, before you submit your bid or get a notification of acceptance, that you look at all those addendums and save them. Those addendums, once a property is accepted, the property will no longer be available on HUD Home Store, so you won't be able to see any of those disclosures or the sales contract package anymore. What I like to do is take the sales contract packet and save it into a file, and that way I can grab it at any time along with the other disclosures that were on that particular property. Sometimes these change. There has been a lot of changes since the last time I did this, and a lot of it has to deal with some more disclosures. We're used to all those disclosures and everything we do, and then there's been some issues with title as far as how that process works now. That'll probably be the biggest thing, and I think later on, if it's needed, I can go have a representative from Northwest Title here to be able to do a webinar also and talk about the title process. Wisconsin is a buyer title choice state. HUD did allow that to happen. But the problem that we've been having is that the underwriting guidelines that HUD uses, most of the title companies around here have not been able to follow. At that point, you need to find a particular title company that uses the same underwriter as Northwest Title, or use Northwest Title completely. I found that it's easier involving less title companies than more. It is up to you guys on how you want to handle that. I can answer those questions anytime throughout, by email or text, or just give me a call and I'll kind of point you through that process, because that's a little confusing at times. Well, let's go through the sales contract packet. Your first page here is going to say, hey, congratulations, you did good. You cannot ever email, again, I won't say ever, because that'll probably change in a couple weeks or a month. But right now, this contract package must be overnighted down to Sugar Land, Texas. At the bottom of this slide, you see where the package needs to go to. Included in that package is, I wish I'd never put this here, but utilize the listing agent. Call me for any questions you may have. Well, I get a lot of those questions, but not a big deal. That's what I'm here for. It also says in here, it's recommended that the assigned listing agent review the package before overnighting to ensure the package is complete and can be approved and executed in a timely manner. The original contract and bid must match exactly. That goes back to the as far as the way the buyer's name shows up. We want to make sure that is, if you wrote it as John Doe, that it does match John Doe on the contract package and not John P. Doe. You want to make sure that's completely accurate. That's the #1 reason why contract packages come back, is that their name was not the same on the online submittal as it was on the hard copy submittal. Revisions tend to delay the execution of the contract. 70% of all contract revisions arise from signed contracts submitted to best assets with different information than of the original bid sheet. So, proof of funds. In that lender's package that I pointed out on the HUD Home Store website, there is, and also in this package, is a sample letter that the lender should use. I've had issues with some lenders not willing to change their formatted letters that they get from corporate. Keep in mind, this is a HUD requirement. It must have the property address, the FHA case number, and the type of loan that the people are applying for. If those things are not on there, that contract is susceptible to being rejected. So we want to make sure that is done properly. I think most of the lenders, because of the amount of HUD properties that are out there now, most of them have changed their requirements and are willing to work with you on that. Even if it's just typed in there, something's got to be in there as far as that FHA case number and the property address. A lot of times I don't see that, and then the contract package can get rejected because that's not on there, because we don't know exactly what property they were pre-approved for. It's real important with that pre-approval letter to know what type of financing, because if HUD sees that you've submitted a bid that on an FHA uninsurable property and you used FHA financing, they're going to know that, and they're going to reject that offer because it wasn't insurable. Next screen here is a little checklist. I find this, in past years I never really looked at checklists because I thought I knew everything. But now I find that these are very important. So there's a reason why it's here. I like to go down and I check the box, and then right before I send it back out, I check the box next to it just to make sure that I've double checked it. I don't like paying an extra $28 or $40 to send it back down there for no reason. Earnest money forfeiture policy, important acknowledgments. All this stuff, if you go right down the list and you put it right in order as a checklist, it makes sense, it works. I haven't had anything come back to me in a while, as long as you follow this format. The one thing that has changed on here in the past is at the very bottom, or towards the bottom, you're going to see copy of purchaser's driver's license or photo ID, copy of purchaser's social security card. That used to not be on there. earlier this year and towards last year. So that's one big change that's been on here. And that is something that you're going to have to make sure that you have at the time that you have your buyer sign your contract. HUD does state that your hard drive or your hard copy is supposed to be written at the same time that you put your bid online. A lot of us I know don't do that. I myself am guilty of that every now and then. But we want to make sure that your buyer is sitting right there, getting that contract done right away so that any questions can be answered right at that same time. HUD does not allow whiteouts, crossouts. Everything must be clean, okay? Next page here is this is very important because this is the second reason why most of the contracts come back is because the earnest money wasn't filled out properly. Here are 3 examples. Any earnest money that is, or any purchase price on a property that's over $50,000 is a $1,000 earnest money. Any offer on a property that is under $50,000 is a $500 earnest money. That earnest money check is going to be made out one of 2 ways. It'll be in the middle section, you'll see HUD or the buyer's name, John Smith. Now, in Wyoming, North Dakota, Montana, Wisconsin, you will follow the rules above. Still with the 500 and 1,000, but you are going to make it out to the title company that can actually close it. Okay, and that if you find a local title company that can be compliant to HUD, then you would put up their name in there and send. But the check is still going to go in the contract package down to HUD. You're not going to just send it right to the title company. If you cannot find a title company that is compliant to HUD's requirements, then you are going to revert to the middle section where it's going to be HUD or the buyer's name. And it cannot be one or the other. It has to be both. A lot of people I just see an earnest money check come in and just says HUD. Well, that's not acceptable. It's both, not one or the other. So take some time to review that. HUD does not accept any personal checks or cash. The other day, you know, I got some copy of some cash. Well, I don't really want to get a felony for that, so we're trying not to do that, at least. All right, next section here talks about the forfeiture of the earnest money. It talks about investor purchases, owner-occupant purchasers, cancellation of the contract. I suggest you really read this and make sure you understand when the earnest money could be forfeited. All right. Important acknowledgments. This is real important that HUD homes do not follow state or city codes. One big thing that has come up on a couple properties, and there might even be a couple of you on this call that this has happened to, is that if you have a property like, let's say, in the city of Eau Claire, HUD will do its title search, but they're not going to know if there's any special assessments, things like that on there. Even though that it may say that you know, it comes up on your Schedule B that there's a curb and gutter in there, HUD doesn't pay that completely. They will prorate it from the time that HUD has owned the property. So your buyer is going to be responsible for that. If there's any delinquent utility bills, things like that, or encroachments or code violations, you need to be proactive as the buyer's agent or the selling agent, and find out if there is. Do not rely on completely one particular item or the other. Do your research, call the city, call the town assessor, find out if there's anything on there so that when you do see the title work or the final HUD, or the preliminary HUD statement, you know that that property is being taken care of and the credits or debits are going where they're supposed to be. And you can see that section on section 5. It says pending special assessments are buyer's responsibility. Section 6, continued mold growth. I don't like to use the word mold, but we use the word discoloration. If the property does start to develop some more discoloration, HUD's not going to do anything about it. That's just the way it is. Changes in financing is another section, section 8 to look at. If your buyer switches from FHA financing to non-FHA financing, buyer must reimburse HUD at closing for all expenses incurred in the process of removing the lead-based paint. So let's say HUD started doing their lead-based paint remediation and your buyer decided they wanted to use conventional, and HUD's got $3,000 involved in lead-based paint. Your buyer's going to end up paying for that. Access to the property and removal of the lockbox must be coordinated with myself. You do not get a set of keys from HUD at closing. Basically what happens is you need to coordinate with me to be able to go over to the property and unlock it for your buyers, or arrange and make sure that your buyers have a set of locks at closing. We cannot give out those HUD keys anymore. There will always be the combination lock boxes on these properties. Please watch your book of showing and hit view details when you get notified that your showing's approved, and it will tell you what the lockbox code is. Very important. I love book of showing for that fact. But I still get 3-4 calls a day and what is the code? So let's try to be a little bit more proactive with that. All right, talks a little bit more about the lead-based paint for FHA buyers. It sounds confusing. The bottom line is $4,000, and also towards the stabilization of lead-based paint, then the buyer must switch to a 203K if it's not acceptable to them. So if it's more than $4,000, you're going to have to do something a little bit different, or the buyer's going to have to cover the difference, and that will also have to be included with the final testing of it to make sure that it has been done. Make sure that your lender is aware of that. All right, next section here. Very important. I cannot tell you how many phone calls I get from people asking me a lot of questions on it, and had they just watched the video, they probably wouldn't have to call me. It's not a very long video. Granted, it's not very, it doesn't have cartoons and stuff in it, but it's there for a reason. There are 2 spots for you to actually sign, stating that you have watched the video. Now, there may be at times in the future, that video may change a little bit. So just because you watched it once last week doesn't mean it's the same this week. And there may be a situation where something was in that video that you didn't realize the day before, and you lose your contract because you didn't watch that video. There also is a daily questions and answer Q&A call. There's down below, you'll see that Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. It's a webinar, so you've got a participant passcode, you've got the dial-in number, and then every Wednesday I have a broker's meeting, webinar basically. So we go through any changes. Also, usually on Fridays, some of us are in there for that. Now, keep in mind, there is 230 some broad listing brokers in the United States. So that call, sometimes it's neat to go in there and just listen to what the brokers are saying. So maybe that'll give you a couple extra pointers in there. But anyway, you still need to sign both places here. This all goes in with your contract and is part of your contract checklist. Next page is the instruction for the sales contract. Really easy to go through. It talks about every line item and where you need to put certain items. I'm going to skip right over that. There's nothing. You should just read that, make sure that you understand what that's all about, and reference it to the sales contract package. For those of you that have the newest version of Adobe, which I find that a lot of people don't, because actually I didn't until last week, and I got a really neat one now. I think it's Adobe 10 or something like that. It works great. The Adobe 7 that I had was not very functional for a while. So you can actually type in here now with the new version. First, you're going to put in the buyer's name. Keep in mind, it must match the electronic submittal way that you put it in there. So if it's John Doe, put John Doe in here. HUD case number, that is the 581 number. It's always a 581 number in Wisconsin. Okay. Underneath here, you're going to put just the way it is. I've had a couple contracts come back because it wasn't exactly the way that HUD wanted it here. So you're going to put the street number, 123, Main Street, unit number if applicable, the city, let's say Eau Claire, the county, Eau Claire, the state, Wisconsin, and one thing that's not on here that HUD really likes to see is a zip code. So if you do that, then they'll actually think you know what you're doing, and they'll be happy with you. Section 2, if it was John Doe up here, this is where it's going to be down here also, John Doe, a single person, or John Doe, a married person. That's what references the word style here. The agreed upon purchase price, over on section line 3, it's going to be put here. What type of earnest money that they've done. Purchaser has paid either $500 or $1,000. You cannot pay more. Your buyer cannot come and say, hey, I'm putting $10,000 earnest money down, because that will come back to you. It's either $500 or $1,000, period. Doesn't make it look any better if you throw that in there. The earnest money deposit shall be held by whom? HUD's designated closing agent is normally what I put in here. If you do find a title company, first of all, let me know, because I don't know of any around here that can do HUD's underwriting guidelines. That's where you would also put that. Normally what I'm seeing put here is HUD's designated closing agent. Section 4 talks about the financing. Purchasers applying for FHA, insured financing involving the 203B, the 203B repair escrow, or the 203K with a cash of down payment of X. This section here would only be for if you're using a 203K loan, because this talks about how much money they're putting down. If none of these are applicable as far as FHA financing, then you're going to go right down to here. Purchasers paying cash or applying for a conventional or other financing not involving FHA. Section 5 talks about the closing costs. That is a section where you are going to put, just like you did on your bid, if you ask for anything of it, that you're going to ask for up to 3% of the purchase price in closing cost credits. Section 5. Section 6 is your commission. Now don't freak out, because once you put your commission in here, this line is not going to automatically deduct right away. Because you'll put yours in here, mine will automatically fill in. You won't see any of this change, and you're going to freak out because it doesn't match your electronic bid that you submitted. Basically, at that point, you just have to go to the next section and check whether it was an owner-occupant. Apparently, this is not. Let's see. If it once it checks, you check some boxes down here. That's when this will automatically populate to the correct number. That should match your bid form. If it does not match your bid form, then you did something wrong, and you must go back in there and figure that out. Section 9, closing, non-negotiable. Don't try to wipe this out or print out a blank copy. It is 45 days. This is always in here, HUD designated closing agent, always there. The 45 days, now it's been my experience lately that most time HUD is closing within 30 days. Has been 30 to 35 days has been pretty decent. Once you get the notification of acceptance that your bid has been accepted, on my end, what I do is I will pen it on the MLS. Okay. At that point, it may take a couple days for you, to obviously send your contract package down there. You have 48 hours. It'll take HUD about 3 or 4 days after that to review it, and providing that there's not any corrections, then you will get the official NOA package, and I will get it also at the same time. That is when your deadlines start for inspections. So you don't need to, once you get the email saying, hey, preliminary, your bid was accepted, you don't need to start scheduling inspections, any of that, until you get the final offer with the seller's signature on it, just like you would do on a normal purchase. Section 10, seller may or may not hold. Once again, refer back to your online submittal to see if you actually as your buyer wanted to be in a backup position or not. Section 11, this has always been kind of confusing. The other addendum is always checked here, but the lead-based paint addendum, not what we're used to. We're used to properties prior to 1978. You will always provide a lead-based paint addendum on this on a HUD property because it talks about what type of financing you're using, not just lead-based paint. So that box on line 11 is always going to be checked as is attached. Section 12 talks about the earnest money once again. Make sure they initial that. That's a section that's usually forgotten also, this little section in here. Section 13, type or print names. Make sure they match. The purchaser's address over here, social security number will be on this line, their phone number here, and the date the purchaser signed the contract. HUD will sign down here and the date here. At the very bottom is the broker certification. You're going to put your company's address in here, the broker's federal ID number, which you'll have to get, the broker's name number, the signature of the broker. For HUD's purpose, you are the broker. The agent filling it out is the one that can sign this, along with the phone number. And then you would also print down here the name of the selling agent and their phone number. This section here, do not reference. This will be just for HUD. Next page is the one that's always kind of forgotten, and they actually changed a little bit over the past year. It's still the same as far as conditions of sale. Make sure your buyer reads this, understanding that HUD makes no representations. If that lawn is really long when you move in, guess what? They're not going to send their lawn crew out there to do anything. They're going to mow it every 2 weeks until the property actually closes. Sometimes it's a little longer, it all depends, but there will be no additional work done to the property with the exception of lead-based paint. The seller may rescind this contract at any time, and I had that happen once where there wasn't free and clear title on the property. They had to re-foreclose on it. It took about another 30 days and it came back out again. So that can happen. At the very bottom here is a set of initials for the buyer. The prior contract, and please, if you have the old contract, a different version, get rid of it, because your old version is not going to have this little box, which everybody forgot about as far as where the buyer's initials goes. But now it's here, so now you know that your buyer has to initial this. This is very important here, and that's why it's highlighted. Falsifying information is punishable as a felony, jail, $250,000, and some tears. So we want to make sure that you understand that your buyer is not purchasing a property as an owner-occupant and truly is an investor. That is the biggest thing that we see happen. And it doesn't happen too much around here. Actually, I haven't heard of a case around here. But in other states, I've seen that where an investor says, hey, yeah, I'm an owner-occupant, and come to find out that they weren't. No work also could be done on a HUD property prior to closing by your buyer. I want to make sure you understand that. There was a case recently where a buyer decided that they wanted to get a jump on everything, put a new roof on HUD property. Well, keep in mind, we're there every 2 weeks inspecting that, and when I showed up and half the roof was gone, I was kind of concerned, and I had to take pictures of that and send it in, so there's no way of not knowing that that was being done. Next section here, this is the disclosure stating that you understand that the property, your initial bid was put online. You're going to put your case number here, which is the 581 number, your bid confirmation number, which was on what you printed when you first submitted your bid online. Once again, also the case number here. Okay, go down here, you're going to have the purchaser's sign here, and print and date. Keep in mind, do not backdate anything. The date that people actually sign it is the date you're going to put on there. You as the broker will also be signing here also. Okay. Next section here is the owner-occupant cert. You do not need this if it's an investor and you're during the period of deadline where your actually investor is bidding on the property. You will not need this page. But as an owner-occupant, you will. We, John Doe, property located at blah, blah, blah. Put their name, signature, and date. There'll also be a certification down here by you as the broker stating that you have not submitted a bid on a HUD property on behalf of an investor when it was only open to owner-occupants. So you'll be on the hook for that too. Notice the purchaser to sales contract package. Now this section here is only used if you are bidding above HUD's appraised value, which remember is the list price, the initial list price. You know, a property may sit on there for a couple, or 30, 45 days or something like that, the price goes down. That is not the appraised value. The appraised value is the first price that it came out at. And at that point you put the FHA case number, property address. You understand that HUD's appraised value was, let's say $100,000. You bid $120,000. The purchaser is going to sign that, and also the broker is going to sign that. Selling broker commission addendum, this is relatively new also. You are going to put on here just so we all understand that you know exactly what you're getting. Your FHA case number, your property address, your company, your buyer's name, the date the buyer signed it, and the commission that you put in on the electronic filing and also on your hard copy. Make sure everything matches. And then what you're going to do here is going to put your name, John Doe, signature John Doe, print your name again, and as title. Whether you're a managing broker, whether you're a broker or an agent, this is what title means. And then you're actually going to date that. Here's the recommended format for lender's letter. It doesn't need to go with the contract package, but I suggest you send this to your lenders and make sure they review it along with the FAQ section that was on HUD's website, just so they understand. One of the biggest problems that we have with lenders is they don't understand that HUD needs 7 days prior to closing to review all their numbers. And all of a sudden I'll get a call the day before closing and the lender will say, okay, we're ready, and HUD will be like, well, we're not. Didn't you read or watch the video? So that's another way they find out. For your protection, get a home inspection. Keep in mind, depending on the time of year, most of these properties have been winterized. So if your lender is going to require the water to be turned on, you're going to get a home inspection. That's the only way you can get around it. There's no way to just say, hey, you know what, I want to do a home inspection. Fine. If your lender is not going to require that water to be turned on, you don't need to fill this out. If your lender is going to require it, most of them do, the city water to be turned on, or at least a well and septic inspection, you're going to have to fill this out that you are having a home inspection. Basically what you're going to do here is check that and have your buyer sign. Very important, especially in FHA, that we all understand water has to be operational. If you have a property that does not have water operational, and HUD reviews that and knows that they disclosed to you it doesn't have operating water, then you're going to have to take your buyer, FHA buyer, and turn them into 203K loan, and be able to allow for that repair of whatever's wrong with that water line. Here's going to be the radon, gas, and mold notice. Pretty self-explanatory. Signature and dates down at the bottom there. Flood zone. This is also pretty self-explanatory, but if they are in a flood zone, this will be located on the property disclosure report on the HUD home store and whether or not. I've only had one property that ever was, but with more and more coming, I'm sure there'll be some more. At the bottom here, you're going to have the purchaser's signature down here and date. Lead-based paint, here it is. This form, although forgotten a lot because the property may be built in 2001, there is more on here than just the lead-based paint. It's better to provide HUD with more information than less. So even if they may come to you, I've had that happen where some reviewers, you don't always have the same reviewers say, hey, you didn't need that. Well, okay, great, well here it is, just in case. At the bottom here, you're going to say, you, selling broker, this is always forgotten, and a lot of people actually just check it, but it says here, initial, no FHA financing if you're not using FHA. That's where it is. The next page here talks about what type of FHA financing. So like I said, it's not all about lead-based paint. It's about the type of financing. Your last page of it will talk about, the lead-based paint, the 15-day opportunity, that you understand that you as a selling agent are aware of the responsibility to provide them with the pamphlet. And at the very bottom here, you're going to have the purchaser and yourself sign also. I don't know why this is still predated, but I'm sure that'll change too. Seller's disclosure of meth. Now this is not, once again, read the first section, pursuant to Minnesota and South Dakota law. We don't need this in Wisconsin. Just in Minnesota and South Dakota do you need this about the meth disclosure. I'm sure that will change in the future for Wisconsin, but as of right now, this section does not apply to us. Field service managers. This section here talks about who the FSM is. That means who is taking care of the property. Nothing you need to send back with them now. You don't need to fill out the inspection request now, nothing. But this is going to tell you, and you need to look on to, when you sign in, and everybody should be signing in. If you do not sign in and HUD finds out you are in that property, that is a revocable NAID offense. If you lose your NAID number, you cannot bid on HUD properties. So make sure you sign in. Do not leave business cards. All that information is on Book of Showing. I do put that on there, that please do not leave business cards. That's considered debris, and then HUD has to clean it up. So make sure you sign in. Like I said, I'm there every couple weeks. I see Book of Showing. I know who and has been naughty and has not signed in. So please make sure you do. I have to take a picture of that sign-in sheet every time I'm there to make sure, and that's just to protect yourself and the HUD, to make sure if there was some damage there, we know who was there and ask them if they saw it at that time. Electricity and gas, I find this statement not true. Especially in Wisconsin in the summer, it may be on one day, but don't expect it to be. The buyer must put all utilities into their name, and all expenses dealt with putting utilities such as electric, gas, water, LP, all has to be provided and done for by the buyer. It's kind of difficult in an LP situation. Your buyer's going to have a minimum fill, and they're going to have to put that in there. Try to line up. It's not such of a big deal right now with water and the appraisal, but in the winter it is, because you only have a few days to get that inspection done. Get the appraiser there at the same time the inspector is there, because in the winter months they will actually re-winterize that property, and if your appraiser wasn't there during that inspection, your buyer will have to pay for another de-winterization of the property. Depending on who the FSM is here, there's a couple forms here, whether it's AMS or it's First Preston. You got to find out which one it is. That will be on the sign-in sheet, or if you forget it, give me a call, shoot me an email, I'll tell you who it is. Every property is not the same. Most of the time right now, there is not money being involved during this period of time from September 1st through April 1st. During that period of time, the property, you will have to send the deposit in. After that, you don't need that money being sent in, because you're not going to be re-winterizing the property. But we highly recommend that when you have, and actually it's not a recommendation, it's a must, you're going to have a plumber there to turn that water on, get the city involved if it's a situation where the meter has to be put in. All that stuff has to be coordinated. It's kind of messy at the beginning, but once you do one, you'll be able to figure it out. It tells you where to send all this money that you need to do, as far as 125 or 150 to the FSM. This section here is the optional $100 down payment addendum. I haven't had any of these properties. Whether they come to Wisconsin or not, we'll have to see. It will be disclosed on whether or not that particular property would apply for the $100 down payment. There's more information on HUD's website about that, but as of right now, we have not had any of those properties in Wisconsin, or actually in our area. Closing assignment form, very important. Once again, Montana, North Dakota, Wisconsin, Wyoming only. This is where you're going to put in, if you find a title company that can be compliant to HUD, this is where you're going to put their information. If you cannot find one, the one that I know of that is Northwest Title. You can put their contact information here. I have a pre-filled out form with all Northwest contacts information on it. You can email me and say, okay, that's the route we're going to go. We're going to use Northwest Title, and I will give you, it's all to you, all pre-filled with their contact people in it. Okay. Request for extension, you won't need this, hopefully ever. You're going to probably get, the first one would be a freebie. After that, you're going to be charged. The buyer's going to be charged for not closing in time. And the terms as far as how much it is in here. I've only had a couple of these done, so everybody's been pretty good about closing on time. Here's part 2 of the request for extension. That also needs to be done. And that is basically it on the whole package here. Not all these things apply, but if you watch the video, which is very important, and you use your checklist, let's get back to the video section here. All right. If you use your checklist package, which is at the beginning here, you can always utilize me. You can use the, let me get back to it. Sorry. You can use the checklist, get back to me with any questions you have. Watching the video is very important here. It is very important to watch that. Also the training calls. Feel free, I mean, you don't have to chime in and raise your hand on the webinars for HUD, but you can definitely listen to what other people are saying, and that might help you in the transaction that you're currently using now. At any time, I'm available to answer any questions. It might take me a while. I do take probably roughly 20 to 25 HUD calls a day. Most of the time I'm returning emails later on in the evening, but that's the best way to get a hold of me. And that should help you guys be successful in closing a HUD property. There will be other changes, I'm sure, in the future, but as of right now, this is the most recent contract package that we have. Any questions, once again, feel free to email me or text me, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you for your time, and good luck.